So today I want to talk to you about a question that I got the other day is, hey, Dr. Rosen, is the carnivore diet good for adrenal fatigue? And while I'm not a one diet fits all kind of guy, I do like to talk about the plus minuses for certain types of diet that can be effective for different kind of people. So when I talk about these five things and suggest that I'm not a huge fan of the carnivore diet, that doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. That doesn't mean it's not going to be beneficial or there's positive things that can come out of it. I'm just giving you my 2 cents and how I think about it, especially as I deal with people that are exhausted, burnt out, can't focus, don't handle their stressors very well, crash in the middle of the day, they have brain fog, their circadian rhythm is disrupted, they don't fall asleep, they don't stay asleep, they don't wake up feeling regenerated, and they're anxious. And they have a stress related HPA axis dysfunction, and they're looking for answers. And ultimately, hey, what's the best diet that I should do? Is the carnivore diet a good diet for the adrenals? Here's how I would answer it. Number one is, how is your digestive health? How is your digestive health? Because I know when there's oxidative stress, there's inflammation, there's upregulation or downregulation or dysregulation of the HPA axis. Ultimately, what's going to happen is your digestive secretions are going to be decreased, meaning you're not going to secrete as much HCl if you're not already taking a acid blocker, or you already have a lot of breakdown of your gut lining and there's not a very good healthy flora. You've been on a lot of antibiotics, maybe you've gone on antifungals, maybe you know about your sugar cravings feeding your candida. So at the end of the day, when you're eating that much protein, it takes a lot of squishing of those HCLs, those parietal cells in your stomach to make that HCl and break it down. And ultimately, if you're not getting good secretions, which not so much you're not getting good secretions, maybe you are, but you have an upregulation of your immune health and you're not supplying the proteins for that at the level that you need to, and thereby you have a protein deficiency and or a stomach acid deficiency, and it makes it very, very hard to digest that food, especially because that's all you're eating. And when that food goes undigested, it creates a fermentation, it creates basically rotting in the gut, it overloads your hepatoportal circulation, and you can create major challenges with it. So for that reason, I'm not a huge fan of it. Number two, the source. So what do I mean by that? Well, the source, I mean, if you're eating carnivore diet and you're eating a lot of protein, chances are you're letting slip in there some sources that aren't grass fed. So if it's corn fed, then ultimately that animal is going to have fatty liver themselves or their selves, and they could be eating grains that are they're rotted or they're moldy, or they could be eating grains that are glyphosated or have GMO sprays on it and pesticides and residues, and the animal is being fed growth hormone, and potentially the bacteria in the meat is not effective or not healthy because it puts a strain on you. So you got to really know your source. I mean, nothing better than being your own source. If someone asked me the question, hey, is a carnivore diet good for the adrenals, when I'm the one who knows from basically from farm to table where that source is coming from, I'd say at least it's a lot better. The third thing I would say is about your immune health. So we know that the adrenals are intimately related with your, what I call the coast guard of your mucosa. So what does that mean? It means basically from the mouth to the anus, you have a mucous membrane that's lined with something called secretory IgA. And with adrenal health, I see this all the time. Your secretory IgA is very deficient. You're very immunocompromised. That will happen when your HPA axis has been firing for so long. And when that happens, and you do come in contact with meat that has potentially bacteria on it, or it's contaminated, and you're not secreting your digestions very well, and you don't have a lot of stomach acid to disinfect whatever is contaminated on that food, it's going to stress your immune system because that coast guard is depleted, and it may put a more toll on your body. So for that reason, I'm not a huge fan of it. The last thing is genetics. The second last thing is genetics. So genetics, what's the story with genetics? So it just really depends. I mean, if you have B12 deficiency issues or methylfolate, especially B12, you're gonna want potentially getting more animal product or B12 sources in your diet to help circumvent those genetics. But what I was thinking about in genetics is when we have an imbalance of oxidative stress and free radical production with antioxidants, you're going to have overgrowth or overproduction of inflammation. And on top of that, if you have other environmental stressors, you're going to have an imbalance between what we call mTOR, which is your building, and autophagy, which is your breaking down and recycling and cleaning out. And when that happens and you're eating lots of protein that has HGH or growth hormone on it, or just protein in and of itself at crazy levels, you're going to stimulate mTOR. mTOR is going to stimulate your white blood cells, it's going to stimulate histamine, and it's going to deplete you. So I'm not a huge fan of it from that reason. And then the last reason number 5, is with the threshold. So we know we have a protein tolerance or a protein upper limit, which means when you're eating way too much protein, it will become gluconeogenic, which means it's going to produce glucose in your body, which is good. I mean, we need it for our blood and our brain to function. But when you're constantly exceeding your threshold, and you have all these other things going on, it's just adding fuel to the fire. It's creating insulin surges. Insulin stuff is very mTOR stimulating. Insulin is very inflammatory. Insulin is very signaling, and it's just not a good thing. So not to say protein can't be helpful, and for a lot of people, like I said, they do well with the carnivore diet if these things are being dealt with, or at least you're aware of it. But I'm not a huge fan of it. So that's what I figured. You know what, hey, someone asked me a great question. If you watch my YouTube channel, just subscribe, like, share, make a comment, and let me know what content you want me to talk about, because ultimately someone asked me this and I said, hey, you know what, I can type out something, but if one person's thinking this, probably 1,000 people are thinking this. So hopefully that made a lot of sense to you. I hope you get a lot of value out of it. Don't try it for yourself. That's the other thing, is be a study of one and try it for yourself, especially if you give yourself some digestive support. Stomach acid, HCl, pepsin, apple cider vinegar, those types of things can be very helpful to squish those acids to break down the protein. Make sure you know your source. Make sure your immune health isn't compromised. Understand if you have a lot of things in the genetic picture that are stimulating growth-like factors that aren't healthy, and then know what your threshold is. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I look forward to ending your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Have an awesome day.